Yeah. Well, not all, just high level. Oh, my God, that's you want. That'd be great. Yeah, let's see what's that. Yeah, we're not doing it. We're different. You saw my one. Yeah, I was like, correct. And then
Are you ready? So we're being recorded, so it's now, I'm Emily today. Hi. Hi, Emily. This is, I would like to call to order the Educational Programs and Services Committee. And, we're being recorded and Emily's on here somewhere.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Emily. Okay. So first of all, could we have an approval of the March 20th Educational Program and Services minutes? Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next one, we move on to new course review, Mrs. Rothenhoff.
All right, oh, there we go. So we were very excited this year as part of curriculum writing to bring on some courses that kind of got, new is an interesting word, but they kind of got a facelift or some additions added to them. These are the 5 courses that were written this year at the high school level in the English department. What you have in front of you are the course outlines from a resource that we use called Embark, formerly known as Build Your Own Curriculum or BYOC. And it's our warehouse of all of our curriculum documents. And so it's a nice place to go to upload and make sure we have everything, teachers have access to it. The first course, and actually I think my list is out of order from how your packet is, but TV2 was a course that was brought on by Mrs. Barker. Actually, she's Mrs. Heron now, that's my fault. She did TV1 and she rewrote TV2, so that way it was an opportunity for the students to really dive into the production factor of TV producing. They do UPTV, they do a lot of things around the district to promote events, but her biggest activity and biggest accomplishment is the live streaming of graduation. And so students that are in that TV2 course will be taking a part of that, which is a really nice enhancement to the graduation celebration for our families that maybe can't be there or for whatever reason need to live stream. So that's TV2 with Mrs. Barker. She did a really nice job enhancing the course to make it a really well-rounded opportunity for students to practice some of those literacy skills that they're getting in their English classes. The next 2 are the Film is Lit series. Those were brought on by Mr. Hansley. He is very excited about these courses. So there's 2 parts to it. We always had Film is Lit, which was the story, but it was a half credit. We added on Film is Lit, which is the style. And so he broke the course up into 2 half semesters. The story really looks at movie production and the way in which the directors tell the story and the lens with which the director uses the story to convey the message. If you look at the list of films that are in there, you can see they all kind of have a little bit of an interesting twist to their storytelling. And so that was that first half credit. The second one is Film is Lit, the style. And that's really looking at the way in which the film was shot to enhance, the storytelling. So my favorite movie is in there, Forrest Gump. And so when you look at the director's style and the way in which they tell that story, it really enhances the understanding and the message. Mr. Hansley is very excited about this, and he did a really nice job building in these films, getting the students to really understand the message that the director is trying to get across. There's some written elements in there as well that the students are going to have to respond to, which is really exciting. 9th grade English, going back to that was an enhancement of that course. Mr. Calvello really just built in, really enhanced the assessments, making sure that it was rigorously aligned to the standards and a nice preparation to go into our English 10 course, which is a trigger course for the final one that you'll see in front of you is the 11th grade world literacy course, or world literature course, excuse me. This course we had previously taught at the high school. It might have been 10 or so years ago. It fell out of the course offerings just because of interest, but Mrs. Rushatz really brought it back to life. And she has built a wonderful course with, samplings of literature from all over the world, from Middle Eastern lit to Greek lit to Indian lit to African lit and Asian lit, and then finally coming back to modern American literature and bringing it all together. I did tell her that she has a very optimistic schedule, given all of the text that she has. But since this is the first time running this course in quite some time, she wanted to be, she wanted to just kind of put it all out there and see what's actually going to fit into the course when the kids take it. So this is an 11th grade option. You will see that she did do Forrest Gump on here as well. And I was worried that it would coincide with Mr. Hansen's course, but the students are either gonna probably take Film is Lit with him or World Lit with Mrs. Rushatz, and so they'll get Forrest Gump. So those were some of the newer courses that we brought into the high school for next year, 25, 26, and you know, kudos to those curriculum writers. They did a wonderful job.
So do we have an idea of how many kids signed up for these?
A lot.
Yeah.
Film is Lit is, so Film is Lit, so TV two is an elective, that's a smaller group, because it's really, you have to get through TV one, that's the prerequisite to take it, so that's gonna be a smaller group of interest on courses. Film is Lit. I can probably pull it up and give you numbers if you want, I just don't have it open right now, hang on a second.
Can I just, while you're looking that up, can I just add some information? This is the function of educational, this group, programs and services is really to talk about the curriculum maps. To share with you, you know, we award curriculum writing contracts annually. They have fulfilled those expectations, and once, you know, these are shared and moved forward, they're in the programs of studies and we purchase the materials. So, these are available for review. And so that's why we always share them at the end of the year here. As you will see, there is one required course in this bunch, right? The rest are elective courses. So, you know, often questions that come to my attention are, do they have to take this? Well, the answer is technically no, with exception to ninth grade English.
Yeah, so, and just to kind of piggyback on that, so ninth grade English academic, which is the course that was rewritten, has 187 students requested for next year. The honors version of the course is 31, which encompasses all of our ninth grade class coming in. Which is right around 215. The TV production 2 has 26 students that requested it, so that's gonna be potentially 2 sections, is I think what we had it slotted for, which is what we were building it out for. World Film Lit Story, 107 requests. Film Lit Style, 98 requests, and World Literature, which is replacing 128 academic and 38 honors. So they have options now. 11th to 12th grade can take Brit Lit, World Lit, Film is Lit, so they can mix and match. So that includes 11th and 12th graders that would have requested World if they opted to take it as a senior. But yeah, no, there's quite a bit. I mean, it's a full grade level of interest in most of those, you know, most of those electives, which is great. So we have them, you know, scheduled and rostered and rolling right now. So
kudos to these teachers. These are high interest sounding to me, so that's wonderful. Can we take them to? I know, well, I was just saying at the beginning of the meeting, like, can I sit in on this? This sounds great, and I like the space SPASE format too. It's to analyze rhetoric basically. And then I know that Alicia uses Space Cat, which is like a little bit of a deeper analysis, so I like the alignment there. That seems really good. One small suggestion, and this I make this suggestion to all English classes everywhere. Even with academic, I would try to get them into a database at some point to understand research a little bit. I just didn't spy that in here. It doesn't mean it's not there, but that's something I just across the board, I'm like, just get them in there like once in a year. So that's the only thing I have about for all these, even in elective, like if they do decide to go to college, they're gonna need to understand that this thing exists. Yeah, that's it.
Good suggestion, yeah, thank you.
Right.
Any other questions about those courses for me?
No, they're great.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I like the film one, that's awesome, love it.
Yeah, that's gonna be, I have a feeling that's gonna be a hot button class, that kids are gonna really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Alright, over to Mr. Flanagan.
This won't be as long as my TSI presentations. So, um. So the first thing that we wanted to have a preliminary discussion, we, you know, at our last meeting of the year with the Perk Up Committee. And this is something that we've kind of been, I want to say, discussing in different ways throughout the year. Really, since I started, kind of like looking at a way to incorporate an internship or apprenticeship experience for our students for credit. So a way that we could have the industry partnerships that we've built with businesses and business tours kind of expand in a way that will allow students to get some more hands-on experience with, you know, with the business, you know, for potentially an extended period of time. So one of the things that's floated that we're looking at potentially for a pilot. We already went through our program of studies mods and everything else, but this kind of is a potential pilot. Is much like we run a community service class, which is a half year, you know, half credit semester. Looking at a capstone course where we would, you know, Lehigh University and, you know, Justin actually pitched this. You know, they partner with Lehigh University and Lehigh comes to them and they, you know, they have students and the businesses present an idea, something like we have a need for, you know, organization, we have a need for fabrication, we have a need for, you know, something in the accounting area, whatever it may be, whatever the industry is, whatever the business, you know, specialty is. And we would have a student that would develop like their own, they would research and develop a proposal as part of their capstone that would fulfill that need for the business. The business would sponsor the money to do the materials, and then the student, whatever materials it may be, whether it's wood, if it's like they fabricate something for business, is what we kind of talked about, like, you know, organization type stuff and different things they could do as part of our STEM program, our X Lab and things like that. They would then take the semester, they would work with a faculty member, craft it, build it, whatever department it would fall in, whether it's, you know, an accounting class or things like that. Then they would present their project at the end and they would get this like industry-based experience, and they would get credit for it. So it's kind of, you know, as we look at our pathways this summer to realign it, we're contemplating as these discussions evolve with businesses and with the chamber, just to potentially pitch this capstone idea. And this is just kind of a way we wanted to introduce it to all of you, because as we continue to plan it out, you could be hearing more about it. So I wanted to just throw it out because you know, getting a work-based experience, you know, not just for our Western Center students, but for our non-Western Center students, especially as they get to their senior year, we've changed credit requirements now. So you know, there's a lot of kids that are going to be going through with 24. You know, they don't need to get to 28. They can get 28 if they want the scholars diploma, but offering this as an elective gives them a work-based experience in an industry they might be interested in going to college for. I mean, you know, ideally it'd be great if we had, you know, engineering and things like that were part of it, that would really kind of capture a huge audience. I don't know what we're gonna get from businesses. I don't know what projects that they would need. I don't know what kind of needs they'll share with us. I floated the idea, you know, to Dan Moyer, who's, you know, obviously, you know, and he's all over this idea. Like, he thinks it's awesome. So there's a lot more discussion and planning that would have to go into it, but we wanted to at least kind of like lay it out there that this was something that we're investigating now.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
I like the idea, I'm having trouble visualizing, do you have any more specific example? I
So here's-
think I know where you're going, I'm not sure what it would look like.
So they, like, for example, Justin, when he was talking about this, shared that they had like a need to organize, you know, I think like incoming and outcoming
He's from.
materials from UST.
Okay.
So
that
they
helps.
partnered with they had a student partner with them, a college student or a group of them. They fabricated design plans, blueprints, they wrote a proposal, they did the research, they brought it to the business, they said, hey, this is what we think could serve your need. The
Okay.
business said that looks amazing. They sponsored it with like $2,500 for materials, and the students then took the rest of the time to build it. Then they had like a presentation where they would reveal it, they would walk through their steps that they took. So it would be a student-driven, student-directed kind of, I almost want to call it like a genius hour to some extent, where they
Kinda
would.
like a group internship,
It would be, it could be individual, it could be part, it could be groups, it could be a group that did it, it could be individual.
And are
Just
you
depends.
picturing multiple businesses per year perhaps?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
that helps.
And sort of the nature of the discussion at, you know, with our GUP group that we had was really around operationalizing all of this learning that students are doing. And, you know, our students at the Western Center get to do a lot of that hands-on project-based work production where not so much at, you know, homeschool, at the high school. And so really, we would be trying to gather many businesses and then back map them to the courses and the pathways. And so, you know, as kids see these opportunities, it would give them a chance, you know, to really apply.
Yeah. And then that's like, you know, and like, for example, like, you know, a STEM pathway, there's so many different options you could go with the capstone. Education pathway, we have the Kutztown dual enrollment where they get observation hours every other day for the entire school year, where they're gonna be working in actually in our classrooms, in our K-3 buildings with teachers. And going to college to get 12 credits. So like operationalizing that future forward mindset where we're saying, okay, you've done all this work, you've toured these businesses, you've done, you know, you've done your career artifacts, you've done your research, you've taken freshman prep, you've taken, you know, financial, you know, you've taken, you know, personal finance, you've taken, you know, all these courses. Now, how can we connect this to something you might want to do and give you an experience to, you know, to get your hands into it and get, you know, get some research. It's very, very early, like I was joking.
I was gonna say our timeline.
Just joking with-
I sprung this on him because I'm like, you know what, let's share it with the committee.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but there was some ideation out there about making it happen. And really,
No, I know about this.
Yeah.
No, I came in out of the end, I was like, we should talk about this like a week ago. I was like, you found right.
put that on the
Right.
agenda, but it's just, and just so you know, we're really trying to forge those partnerships. With our businesses who are in need of that kind of creative work. And so the hope was that at our breakfast, we would talk about and try and solicit support and partnership with the businesses.
And that's really what kind of spearheaded it. We were trying to figure out the next level of how to talk about industry, you know, at the breakfast that we have every year and how to kind of like, and we talked about like the future of work or some theme around like this concept and then ways we could tie it back into our students with creating those work experiences that are hands-on.
That's the chamber breakfast.
Yeah.
That's on November 5th at 8 o'clock at the
Yeah.
4th, 5th grade
Yeah.
center.
Yeah.
Just for timeline, yeah, but like.
Business education.
For example, Rob from the YMCA was there and we have students who are interested in kinesiology and he said, I can think of, 5 things. I need you, students interested in that, come in and do, work with our
Design
trainer
class
and
or-
design
Yeah.
a training class. And for kids by kids, those kinds of things
And
and
it all lends itself back to here's what you're gonna use this course for.
Correct.
Here's what.
answering that
Right,
question.
making it relevant.
Like, gonna do
And
it.
that's- It's continuing to make it relevant, and that's, I think, a huge piece of what we're trying to go for, and. I mean, it's got a ton of potential, it's just, we had our last meeting about 8 days ago, so it's. It's definitely a summer project that we're gonna kick around, and I'm sure that. I'm probably gonna end up having to talk at that breakfast to try to trick people, so I'm prepping in my head, I'm talking through this out loud with this committee, and I'm thinking like, I'm gonna have to say this again to the businesses. So great, but hopefully by then we'll have a little bit more of a framework. Right now, this is just an idea, and we just wanna make sure that, everybody, you guys heard about it and. More to
You
come.
know of other schools who do something similar or this?
There's some versions of it where they do like a work-based experience for credit, like there's people that have called it like career exploration, where you actually go work for a marking period, like you can go work and you get credit at the end of your senior year. There's different versions of it, nobody does this exact thing, but I can't say that there's a lot of schools that have the. Very, very tight-knit partnerships with local businesses that would support something like this, so this would almost be kind of a unique. Experience for upper perk students that may not entirely exist elsewhere. Which I don't hate either, I kind of like that, so,
Just wondering if you could pull ideas.
We can pull a capstone plan from someone, but maybe not this exact capstone. We'll have to kind of modify it in a way, like capstone is a common, experience at different buildings. This type of capstone, and that was the best word we could come up with on what we were gonna talk about it as, like this kind of capstone will need more work. To kind of redefine it. But I also, I'm not trying to be anybody else. We're trying to be us, and this is definitely something that. The community with our partnership has shown that we need, or could use, or could benefit, our kids could benefit from, so it's also kind of it just was a cool idea that we kind of, like, I literally brought my like hand scratch notes from the meeting. That like,
It's fresh.
that's
Yep.
literally how, it's from, May 8th, we literally connected, and so that it's just an idea that we thought had a lot of potential.
Good job. Excellent. Excellent. All right, so I guess unless anybody has any questions.
Keep us posted on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, more to come.
Yeah.
We're gonna, it's a nice summer project to build out a little bit.
In case you have anything else to do.
I think our thing's done.
All right, we'll move on to the discussion of high school grading procedures. Is it?
Me again, all right. So, yeah, I think this might be dead, Jim. Okay, there we go. So, one of the things that we, when I started, that came up with the staff was just that we wanted to have a discussion about grading. And grading as a building, because. What I was made aware of when I first came in was that there was a lot of inconsistencies across content areas, courses, grade levels, course levels. So I put together a grading committee and we met multiple times throughout this year. It had multiple departments in it. We had special ed, PE, English, we had social studies, we had, Megan was part of it, obviously us, the administrators, and then different people kind of like popped in and out throughout the year to kind of engage in conversations, and then the departments gave feedback to, they kind of, they would go out and get feedback and input from their departments. And what we kind of came to is, the way our current grading model is set up is there's two categories for grades and marking period grades. Summative assessments and formative assessments. So one category is summative, one is formative. Summative assessments, for lack of a better way to define them, are end of unit, like culminating assessments, large assessments. Formative assessments are during the unit, that, they could be small, just to determine kids' progress. It's checking to see how kids are doing, right? Right now, we have 3 different weighting models in the building. We have some classes set at 70-30, meaning 70 summative, meaning we're putting all the pressure on the big assessment for kids. 70-30, some other classes are running at 80-20. And then there's some classes running at 90-10, meaning that 90% of your grade is tied to those summative assessments. 10% is based on formative, or 80-20, 70-30. What this has created is it's created a couple different things. From the perspective of the committee, it creates a high stakes testing environment where the pressure is on you for summative assessments. For some of our lower achieving kids, this is a lot of pressure. It's created, this is kind of some of the student perspective, some of the students, when they get behind in work, they say to their teacher, well, I'm not doing any of the formatives because they don't count, they're not gonna help my grade, so I'm just gonna do the summatives. So then they'll be in class and they'll basically be saying, I'm not gonna do anything because I don't need to do this because it's not gonna help my grade. Which creates an interesting discussion for the teacher when they're trying to say like, hey, like everything's important. And, overall, it's, if you do poorly on one summative assessment, it takes you, there's really no way to get you out of that hole other than cross your fingers that you get plenty of options in summative and hope that the formative helps you a little bit. So what we decided was that as a committee, and this is kind of like, I'm kind of mapping out like 9 months worth of conversation. So what we needed was, and I'm a big fan, as hopefully everybody's figured out, that I like consistency. Like I like it to be a consistent model in the building that everybody understands. So the 3 different weighting models was already like raising a flag for me in the beginning.
Do you know how we got to that point?
It's been like a 20-year, it's been here for a long time. Nobody's ever engaged in a conversation or looked at it from what I gather. It's been here. It's been here before all of us in this room. I don't know exactly who implemented it like that.
It's just one of those.
It's just one of those things. So we took the year to really talk about it before we wanted to engage in a conversation with you all, just because we wanted to do some calculations and kind of like walk through ways we could make, maybe make a revision to allow for a little bit of a modification. We wanted to address this high stakes testing format. We test a lot. We test students a lot, and some students are not good test takers whatsoever. They struggle on tests or larger assignments because of various needs. We have students with high level needs, especially like some of our special ed students who larger assessments, larger projects, they're a lot. Now they're broken down and there's modifications to those assignments based on, need and IEPs and things like that, but without having any other way to boost your grade, you are really tying the marking period performance to that summative category, as well as, us, all through TSI, looking at our student failures and seeing a high level of failures in the building. So more than I would think for a school this size, quite frankly. So what we wanted to do was create consistency, address high stakes testing, and then basically put value on all work as part of it. Not allowing students the ability to forego an assignment that's in a lower weighted category just because they feel like it's not gonna help their grade. So our proposal, which I have a link in here, is to go to a points-based model and eliminate the two categories. And I'm gonna kind of share this proposal a little bit. We'd be going to a points-based model, but there's conditions, I'll say. So what we came up with as a group, Jim, could you zoom in on this a little bit, just make it a little bit bigger? I don't have my glasses on, I'm like trying to read it.
Can't see it either here.
Trying to read it.
Upper right hand corner, Jim, with the 3 dots.
Other
right.
Okay.
There you
You're
go.
on the right, there you go.
Go down to the Zoom.
Up a little bit.
In the middle.
Keep going, keep it right. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, make it zoom big so we can see it.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Thank you. So we're gonna configure them on a points-based model, however, maintain consistency in courses. So if you have multiple teachers teaching, like we just looked at ELA 9's curriculum, you're gonna have more than one teacher teaching 9th grade academic, they still have to be consistent. They have to be in the same ballpark. We're gonna maintain the 50% baseline for a kid who fails, that was something that we say consistent 6 to 12. Midterms and finals are gonna remain unchanged, so they're gonna be the same. The way our grade books are configured, which is on page 3 of this document, is marking periods are worth 20% each, midterms worth 10, finals worth 10%. We're still gonna maintain the midterms and finals, we're still gonna go 2020, 2020, so it's 80% of your grade for the years based on your marking period performance. But we're gonna put assessment in one category. Just all points from assessments go into the same category, formative and summative. And that'll be 75% of your grade. So 75% of your grade is gonna be based on your assessment performance. So, larger assignments, when you go to a points-based model, if your grade book is based out of 500 points, a 100-point assignment is still 20 points, 20% of your grade. You don't need to add the weighting on top of that. You're still naturally giving the assignment value by giving it points. So we're gonna put all the assessments into that category. We're gonna require a minimum of 6 assessments per marking period per class. So every class, you have to have at least 6 assessment grades. That can be small assessments, formative along the way. That can be unit assessments, papers, projects, whatever your summative for that unit's gonna be. It's gonna be a points-based, it goes in like it's worth 50 points, you get a 45, it goes into the big pot. The next category, Jim, could you scroll down a little bit? Is learning activities. So I kind of define formative and summative there, and then learning activities will be 25% of your grade. This allows for classwork, homework points, group work, warm-up and closure responses, for example, which I could argue actually are formative assessment. But we're splitting hairs a little bit. Discussions, like if you do a PDI seminar and you want to give, and students participate and they jot down an idea and they stick it in the fishbowl, like a fishbowl discussion, and they pull it out with their name, great, like you contributed to that, 5 points, great. You want to count, like, a classwork activity, great. They're capped at 25 points max per assignment, so they can't be worth any more than 25 points for each assignment, and there's a minimum for those per marking period. So they could be 5 points, they could be 25 points, they could be 10 points, they could be 7 points. You could do a reading check quiz, although that would be a formative assessment for 5 points because you want to check to see if the kids read the night before. So you would have a total of 10 assignments per marking period, 75% of your point minimum. They can have more than that, but minimum 75% of your points would be on assessment, 25% would be on learning activities, and let's say again that your marking period is out of 500 points and you get 425 points. You divide it by 500, that's your grade. There's no weighting that's gonna reduce the formative assessment value. There's no weighting that's gonna put too much pressure on the summative. It's just those bigger assignments are naturally gonna count more, so you still have to do a good job on them. But now basically, there's nothing in class. Everything's fair game, because if you do bad on an assignment, you can boost, you can get it, you can help your grade a little bit. If you like, take a small quiz, you do a classwork assignment.
It's so much better for engagement.
It is,
And that,
the-
that's great.
that's the thought. We preliminarily ran some calculations and. For a kid who turns everything in, this will help them. For a kid who blows it off. They actually might do work, but let's say they pass all their summatives, but they don't do anything in the formative category. It actually might not help. So it's gonna up the ante, saying like, you gotta do all your work, guys, like you gotta be engaged, you gotta, whatever the teacher gives you, whatever's worth points, like it all goes into a big pot, and your average is calculated out of that pool. There's many districts that I've worked in that run this model, that run a model that's very similar to this. This is not something we like created completely. We begged, borrowed, and steal this as a baseline, but we kind of modified it for what we need. We think it's gonna reduce, so if you can go back to that slide, Jim, I have like couple bullet points down at the bottom. That's kind of the quick overview without reading every word on that. The benefits of it is that all work's gonna go into a pool of total points, and marking period grades are calculated based on total points. That means all work is going to count. Larger assignments are naturally going to count more in the total for the marking period, so they weight themselves, like that naturally weights themselves, like if you have a 100-point assignment, that naturally is. Weighting itself is an important assignment to do. You don't need to double weight it essentially and then put it in a category and weight that category more. If a student struggles on tests, they can shine in other ways. This allows them an opportunity to, if you struggle on big assignments, you can shine on a formative assessment, you can do all your classwork. But it's gonna reduce that test anxiety. Hopefully, our goal would be to reduce the pressure on the summative and allow you guys to see that everything matters, so just do your work. Turn everything in, do everything you need to do. You still gotta do good on your tests and your projects, but now you have a little bit of a parachute to kind of balance out if you have, let's say, you have a really bad day, or you didn't study for one. You still have a chance to kind of balance out your points and kind of, catch up. This would be for every class, so it's gonna create a consistent approach and framework for all of our courses. And it was a collaborative effort that all departments were involved in the conversation. We asked some students, like they said, well, why do I do formatives if they're not gonna really help my grade? There's no point. I'll just wait and do the summative assessment. Now, not all kids are doing that, but the kids who are savvy enough to play the points game with the weighting are doing that. Now they can't turn around and blow off and say like, well, you missed enough of these 5-point assignments. That's gonna dump your grade a little bit, so you're gonna really have to stay on top of your work. And that's a mindset shift a little bit, which I think is an important one, because when they graduate. And they go to college, where they go on, like, you can't just say, I'm not gonna do this, like, they go, like, I don't feel like doing this work, but I'll do this one because it's bigger, I won't do this little thing. Like, your boss isn't gonna like that, and colleges aren't gonna like that either, so. It's just kind of a mindset shift, so we wanted to pitch this now, and then the rollout would be in August with our staff. We would communicate to families how grading would look like. We have the grading framework that would get pushed out, this is what great, maybe a little bit of a cleaner version for families that's a little bit easier and cleaner to understand. This is kind of internally for us and for our team. I did not modify it for this committee, I kind of just left it the way it was. I would rather put everything out there to you guys than have any sort of trimmed down version. But this would be a goal to roll out for next year. So we wanted to bring this to the committee, I'm bringing this on behalf of the grading committee. So.
There is a lot of research on assessment. And it's kind of also one of those things where if it works for your school and your students, like I like the rationale you described, like wanting consistency. And also it does end up getting weighted anyway, in a way, like with a larger point score. There's research to support both methods. And I've worked under both methods. In fact, recently, this is not ancient history, but recently I know of a principal who, and not an older person, not stuck in tradition, but wanted to go to weighted. He was very convinced weighted was just a better reflection of actual production from the students. So there's just arguments both ways, but like I was just saying, if you have come to the conclusion this is a better system for your students in our situation, I do like your rationale there.
So, yeah, I mean, and I appreciate that, and yeah, there's definitely arguments for both ways, and part of why we included in the framework that that assessment is gonna be set, points for assessments is gonna be 75% of your grade, is to address that other additional piece of the research where there is a lot to say that research shows that assessment is a big, there are people that have gone to that model. But by capping the learning activities at 25%, it just, it still pushes all the assessment as the number one focus, which summative assessments are all aligned, we're working on aligning all those to standards, so that'll be a performance across standards. What I really wanted to do was just combine assessments into one category, like formative and summative don't need to be split into two categories, that, assessment. By saying, 75% of your grade is assessment points, like, we're still putting that value there. What we're also saying though is. You don't do well on one, and there's other stuff around it that can have you not be like. Completely disengaged as a kid who maybe, you fail one, you do poorly on one thing and you're shut down for the year. Cause you're like, or the market period, like, there's no way I get out of this hole.
Well, and I would
So.
say conversely, some of the dialogue has been the student who is just really academically adept. And is gonna do great on those assessments, regardless of the effort that they put in. And so they're just gonna show up and take the test and do really well. And then the rest of the semester, they may, may not do anything else. And so really it's being an active participant in your, course all along the way.
It's accountability. I love it.
So we sort of I don't wanna say we weighted it without weighting it, but we still kind of weighted it. We still kind of skewed it towards assessment, but what we did was we. Put all those points into one pot instead of like allowing the lower, the learning activity category to not really make a huge dent in that.
I would think that teachers would be more engaged. Wow.
Well, this gives them a little bit more flexibility, and
Yeah.
it gives them a little bit more autonomy. It also allows them to say, like, if you have a class that's like not, that, let's say they're really off task and not doing anything, or they're not producing work. You can start, hey, well, like, turn that study guide, like, I wanna see what you guys are doing, like, let's see if you're reading, let's see if you're doing this, and it allows us to, right now, they can't do that, cause that wouldn't fit into a category for grading.
Right.
So there's, like, I was in an English class the other day, and I taught English for 10 years, and there's a teacher that does a study guide for a book that they're reading, and he's like, well, I'm not grading this. The study guide that he's doing, he's like, I'm not grading this, it's for you, so like, you don't need to fill it out, but I would encourage you to fill it out. That conversation, if it was in this model, I'd say you're filling that thing out and we're reviewing it because I'm gonna be basing my test on this and I'm gonna give you a chance to study for it. And I'll give you, 15 points for it as a learning activity, because that is partially an assessment, because we're gonna review it every day. So I can argue that that's part of, learning the material. But right now, they're not doing that regularly. They're just, they're giving the kids the option to use it. And there's some kids that are just like, I don't need this. I'll just do the Spark Notes and then I'll take the summative and I'll be done. And they'll still do that to some degree, some of them, but this is a way that we're kind of trying to, I guess, modify the perspective a little bit.
So I think, yeah, it'll definitely solve some. I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Procrastination.
No, like on the teacher side, the frustration
Yeah.
of that. And I think it's also gonna solve some frustration on the student side too, with the consistent model. Because if they know there's different classes that have the 7:30 or 90-10, that might.
And that was a big issue for me. I can't support that. Like,
Right.
I struggle to support, I don't care if it's an AP class or a learning support class, like, I struggle with our weighting being all over the place. That is just not, that's just a tough. How do you articulate that to parents? Like, that's part of what I think about, like, well, how come in this class, like, their grade really went up this time? I'm like, well, that's just the way the class is configured, like, it's a tough sell. So it was one of those, let's figure out a way to, clean it up.
Yeah, right.
Well, one thing to sort of tuck away in the AI conversation is, and it may still totally work in here, but formative assessments, students will often, like they take home or they, whatever, they do them on their own, they come back. And those now are pretty much all being used, like the kids are just using AI to like transfer. So just a point of discussion within the AI realm is that there may be a need to put more emphasis on summative assessments. It may still work with what you have. I just thought maybe you should tuck that away and be prepared for some teachers to say, my formative assessments are meaningless almost, you know, kids are just copying. So something to kind of consider as you are working through this. And again, it might still totally work with what you have here. Just give it
Yep.
some consideration.
Yeah, we're in conversations about,
Right.
Who's doing the work that we're counting?
If they aren't really doing those and they're earning high grades, it's gonna end up showing on those, on like the Keystone and stuff that, you know, you gotta be in the English, but you
You didn't really.
can't
know what
write,
you're
you
talking
know.
about.
So, and the AI conversation is much bigger, but in some realms, it's like, why are we even gonna do any formative assessments? We'll just do summative and be like, this is your score. Cause it's.
yeah, I mean, I just don't feel something like, I mean, without splitting hairs, but like just to just, all we do is summative assessments and we don't give the kids anything else, like that's.
No, there has to be a way to give formative like teachers gotta work on that too, like how can I give some meaningful assessment that is formative and shows progress, but yet the student hasn't been just copying or whatever, so
Sure.
it's just.
Yeah.
A much bigger conversation probably.
So, Andrew, can you get a follow-up on the middle school?
Sure.
Because we're gonna solve the inconsistency problem at the high school, and then we're not consistent school to school.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they do, I don't know that they're.
I think it's similarly all over the place. So.
Yeah, it varies.
Now, listen, here's
So,
the-
and I will say,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna give Frank credit, because this is something that has been sort of an undercurrent. With high school staff, I've heard it. And, you know, the commitment to meeting with that group. And no offense, but high school teachers can be very direct.
But we
and
started
so-
out not even close.
It's not a bad thing, but they can be very direct and tied to some of their opinions and ways, and so. I think it's been a good opportunity to have those discussions with those leaders, and then also talk about, you know, some of those extended conversations are around what does a summative assessment? What can it include?
And that's a whole bigger conversation that we're gonna engage, is, you know, once this was framed out, if we're gonna move forward with this, and that's gonna allow us to kind of talk with. You know, as we frame out next year, you know, with our departments on what these assessments look like and what they could be. And things like that, you know, but you know, I feel like it's a great compromise, because in my opinion, it weights it kind of without weighting it. It still puts the focus on assessment, but it just balances it out. It just allows for a little flexibility for our kids, and. You know, it still tells the kids, like, you gotta take your assessment seriously, because 75% of your points or 75% of your grades gonna be based on that, but everything's, you know, we're just how we calculate it. That's really what we're changing. We're not changing. The value of the assessment or the focus on the assessment as the main, you know, group of your points, but we're changing how we're calculating the total value of your grade. That's kind of the easiest way to sum it up, I think.
And yes, I would follow up with the rest.
Thank you. Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
That was two good things.
That was
Thank you.
in a row.
I always try to bring positive things.
That's
you know,
right.
But thank you.
All right, so next we move on to approval of curriculum writers.
You're good to go. You got
Yeah.
Jim,
Thanks,
our
Frank.
clicker is dead, so you're gonna have one.
I have a kid, sorry.
Sorry, I do. I printed this out.
So the mentor pay was the next thing, but I realized that we approved that at the last big meeting, so the mentors are already approved, and
Okay.
we're so thankful for that.
That was what we added this.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gotcha. Alright, so I can, it doesn't matter what I want.
Nope, it's okay. So we're moving to curriculum writers, and Jim's gonna flip the screen for us in a second. I do, at this meeting, we always take a look at the curriculum writers for the upcoming school year. And you'll see, Jim, you gotta flip the slide for me, please. You'll see that we've got many projects going on for next school year. You'll see on the left, that's our K-5 math group. This group did approve our new math resource, which is Ready Classroom Mathematics. And these are the teams of folks that are going to be writing the math curriculum for next school year. They are our pilots, and they have taken on the opportunity to bring this resource to life here at Upper Park. So that's our folks, K-5 on the left.
Can I just add in?
Yep.
Just quickly about this group, just so the committee is aware. Sarah and I have been working with the math writers. And the hard part is keeping them straight sometimes because there's curriculum writers. And then there's math specialists who are math specialists, but not necessarily curriculum writers. And then there's standards-based report card. So those, sometimes those are not the same person. And so we've been, it's been a little, you know, we're trying to create some consistency. So these groups have already been meeting to get them ready to move in to writing. Sarah did our first writers meeting with them. Because we purchased the resource and it's on site, those teachers will have that over the summer, and we built in that summertime in order to touch base and make sure that they're on pace. So this group is particularly challenged in math K-3 because they're writing, piloting, and revising the standards-based report card, which is a huge task. And so, you know, we had to make some decisions about elementary who was moving into ELA. But we're going to have, you know, in talking with them, delaying that a year makes sense because that is a huge amount of work. And so you will see in the professional development schedule I shared out, you will see times during the year where those grade level teams will meet with the math specialists, with the curriculum writers, with the piloters. So then everyone's ready to roll it out in 26, 27. So that group of individuals is putting in serious work. Not that everyone else isn't, but we're asking them to create a new report card or revise it. So
that's our K-5 work going into next school year. At the middle school, not a ton of curriculum writing. We've got some revisions getting done to our 6th grade social studies course. And Mr. Doolin, who is the new librarian, will be revising the middle school library course. And Trina, to your point, I'm gonna make sure that we have a conversation and ensure there's a research unit in there. Because I think that's a really good place for that to begin and for that to live. So that's K-5 and then the middle school. And then Jim, if you want to switch to the next slide. You'll see some revisions to our high school course as well. We are bringing on AP Human Geography at the high school level. This is going to be available to some of our younger high school students, so they can begin their AP journey. Brian Peebles has agreed to take that on. Emily Heron, who did our TV2 class, is going to be moving into journalism. And then you'll see some additions to our social studies and ELA elective offerings in the form of public speaking, creative writing, short fiction. Again, those are courses we've had previously, but they're public speaking and creative writing is not, but short fiction is, and so we're going to bring that to life a little bit. We're also adding 2 new electives at the social studies level with a women in history course and a criminal justice course. We're going to be revising 2 of our math classes, high school geometry and numeric geometry. And then Mrs. Barsh is going to be taking a look at our psychology class. That's our dual enrollment class, and we just need to make some updates to it just to ensure that we're in line with that dual enrollment. So those are the projects the high school next year.
And just to also weigh in, it might seem a lot like a lot of high school electives. That is intentional with the reduction of the graduation requirements and making 11th and 12th grade elective in our content areas. That sort of forced the need to create more elective courses at those grade levels. And so I think that our high school teachers were happy to hear that, because then, you know, they have some autonomy to recommend interest-based course based on student feedback. And so that's why a lot of those are elective. I will also say there is an effort and has been an effort in order to create pathways or diverse courses that cross professions. And we're trying to target some of those areas where we may not have something. Like a criminal justice course, we have a forensics course, but where does that fit? And so those departments are bringing forth those recommendations based on, this would probably lead to some sort of, you could go right into the police academy, or you can go and be a criminal justice major, or you could do forensics and pathology. And so, what kind of experiences do we want to try and create for students? So I think starting next year and certainly moving forward, there's going to be lots of electives that are going to be out there.
In addition, we'll also be doing some summer work. Like Andrew said, with the standards-based report cards, specifically at the 4th and 5th grade level. Jim, if you want to switch the slide. We're also having our middle school teachers at the co-taught in our co-taught classes for ELA and math. Really looking at the co-taught curriculum and how that's a little bit more differentiated to meet the needs of our learners who would require that support in the classroom. So we're hoping to roll that out in our keystone subjects as well. But we haven't had some writers in there yet. But I'm hopeful that through the summer we'll get some folks on board. So we will have, that's our payment for our curriculum writers at this point. But we do have a lot of projects going on this year to really enhance the offerings that we give to our kids.
And if I could just make a note on the previous slide, we are offering AP Human Geography for 9th grade. This is the first 9th grade AP course that we've offered. There was a significant push from our families of high performing students that there were no AP opportunities in 9th grade. The team met with Frank, and we know that AP is a challenging task for 9th graders. I think to your point, things like research and those types of skills, we really have to look back at 8th grade and say, are they really ready for an AP course in 9th grade? This is one we think they will, and I believe at last blush, there were 10 9th graders.
You don't want them to take it and then not pass it.
Correct, correct. So, I want to be really honest that that's our first 9th grade. We've not offered one before. There's high interest. We just want high success. And so we're going to have to be really mindful of that course. As we roll it out next year.
I think it's good to try it, because it can help with your graduation rates. If they have a goal, they know they're going for it, and then they're gonna go off to college. And the goal is for AP courses and DE courses that they finish college more. They're more likely to finish because they'll get there and they're already halfway through. So that's a great start.
That's a great opportunity for our kids.
Yep.
So those are that's the curriculum projects for next school year. Does anybody have any questions on those? All right.
Sarah, if I could just say, Sarah, thank you for all your work doing
Yeah,
your
thank
last
you.
CPS meeting.
That's
You've done a yeoman's job this summer, this year. Andrew's pitched in, Mr. Freeze has pitched in, everyone's pitched in with the curriculum challenges, but thank you very much. You're setting us up for success.
Yep, thank you.
I wish you the best as you're transitioning.
Thank you.
For sure, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna rely on you, Jim, for the next few slides as well. So as you know, I work with the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to support the early intervention transition process for our kids coming into kindergarten. And in the fall, I shared with you some information that we had in terms of the transition meetings and the students at that time who qualified for early intervention services. So this is just kind of an update and a follow-up to that. So we did have our 6 transition meetings, 2 in December, 2 in January, 2 in February. 1 in each building, so 1 in Marlboro, so on and so forth, Hartford. We had a total of 21 meetings at Hereford and 20 meetings at Marlboro. The meetings are about 30 minutes in length, and it's really just an opportunity for parents, and it's facilitated by Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. So they are the ones who schedule the meetings, coordinate with the school district, and then parents come in, they sign a release, and then they become ours at that time, in most cases. So it's a great opportunity for us to connect with families, to build rapport with families, of children coming into our school district. It's a way for us to get to know the students entering kindergarten who are special education, and just understanding their needs, their families' needs, and it's a great way, and it's really a year-long process, so they're here a year before they're here. That makes sense. So with that, we try to make things, we're building our relationships, our rapport. We're sharing information about each school building so that families know what kindergarten looks like, and we share all of the great events that lead up to that kindergarten year. Our registration team supports us, so, after we have our little speed dating session with our families, we walk them on over to registration who attends at the schools to make it easy. And they walk families through the process. Early registration is important for a lot of reasons, but for special education, it allows us an opportunity to initiate the reevaluation process, which assists us in determining whether or not students will continue to qualify for special education. And if they do, what does that programming look like for next school year, and what are the recommendations? So it's very helpful. Jen Malone and Crystal Bittner, came all day to those meetings, and we, worked with our families to help with that. And this year it was very successful. We had a lot of families register on those days, which is great. And we really are asking for families to just begin the process. We're not looking for birth certificates and things like that on those days. We get those things later. But it's really almost like I don't want to use the word commitment, that's not the right word, but it's kind of just saying like, we are looking to, sign my child up for kindergarten. Currently, we are at 42 children who are coming to us early intervention, which is 10 children more than what we started with in October. And if you remember in the fall when I presented to you, that will fluctuate. It has fluctuated, it's increased. Children are still qualifying for early intervention services. Some students will move into our district, some students will move out. Some students will remain in early intervention because they can for an additional year. So it's a very fluid process. It's just something that will be ever evolving up to the first day of school. We do have students coming to us from early intervention programs where they have a higher level of need. So they may need more specific programming designed to meet their individual needs. And in some cases, those programs may or may not be in our school buildings. So we look at those situations through reevaluation and then through the IEP process. So that's my early intervention update. You have a few good hands.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is me too.
Yep.
Can I ask, do you have any sort of update on funding for early intervention from the MCIU?
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Like federal funding?
They're not here yet, the students, so we don't have any funding responsibility for them. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah, and we don't know what our IDA dollars are. yet.
Right.
Okay, so,
And I'm
keeping an eye on it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than what?
I mean,
What you did see, what the board did see was based on those students and those needs, projections for expenditure costs. And the IU's cost plan, which was approved. So we know what the expenditure side looks like. We don't know what the revenue side.
and we always look at least restrictive environment. So our goal always is to educate our students in our buildings using, within our programs. But we do have some students who come to us with very complex needs, where, our programs may not be their free and appropriate public education. It may not be their least restrictive environment. So, but we gather all of that information through reevaluation and also through the programming that they currently receive in early intervention, making sure that there's some level of continuum of programming. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions about early intervention? All right, on to educational benefit review. So, can you go back one? Not yet. I'll let you know. So educational benefit review, this is a systematic way of looking at a student making progress on their IEPs over time. So not only looking at their current IEP, but looking at their previous IEPs as teachers are working to develop their upcoming IEPs. Now you turn to Jeff. So, this whole, the educational benefit review, if you remember Carol's presentation with our special education compliance monitoring. This was part of it, where the Bureau of Special Education, part of it was for us to, they gave us 10 student names. Where we had to go through and make sure that those students met educational benefit review. Jim, can you click on that worksheet? And I actually have copies, it does go. The education, that,
The first one,
yeah, the worksheet, thank you. Just give this back to you. And if you could just kind of scroll down to the next page of this. All right. So what happens with this review is that, and it kind of probes you through what you need to be looking for. So in an IEP, you're looking at their present ed levels, their needs, strengths, their annual IEP goals, their specially designed instruction, and you're looking at that from year to year. And you're also looking at their evaluation report or their most recent reevaluation, just to make sure that the IEPs are, aligned with the needs and things identified in those areas. You can click out of it, Jim. Thanks. So, as a way of taking our compliance monitoring and the educational benefit review and turning it into professional development for our teachers, what we did this school year was we, asked our teachers to complete an educational benefit review on one student on their caseload. And teachers were able, they had the autonomy to select the student that they wanted to. The only premise was select a student where you might have questions about, their IEP, their needs, like something that not a student where that the student's making progress, their programming is appropriate. Select a student where you might find something that needs to be changed. So that's what the teachers did, and they went through the EBR process, they used that worksheet that I just showed you. And then, once the EBR was completed, they had to answer a set of 10 questions. So Jim, can you click on this one? Thank you. So they used their EBR worksheet to go through these questions, which again, is looking at their present ed levels, the assessments that are used to determine what their needs are, the data that drives their goals. And if the answer is yes, that's great. If the answer is no, we have some things that we have to look at. So the teachers did this for each of their students, and then they, utilized the notes section for things that maybe weren't a yes, or if it was a yes, just some things that they noted in those areas. Jim, you can click out of that. And then I'm done. You don't have to click for anymore.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just skimming through the questions on here, a lot of it is focused on year 3.
Say that one more time.
A lot of the questions are focused on year 3, like the second one.
Yes.
Year 3 does.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we're looking at 3 years worth of IEPs. That is what occurred for the special education monitoring, the compliance monitoring. I just had them look at 2 years because for me, year 3 was the IEP that they're getting ready to write. So they are looking at those 3 years because we don't want to see an IEP goal remain the same for 3 years. That should not happen at all. If an IEP goal is that their student's not making progress on that, the teacher, the team need to look at why is the student not making progress. They may need to go back and do some other assessments. The student may need to be reevaluated. There's a number of things that may need to occur to make sure that they're reaching their goals and they're meeting educational benefit. So it is a systematic process of looking at multiple years of IEPs. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So based on the answers to the 10 questions, determinations were made as to whether or not the students met educational benefit. And then as I shared in the notes section, that's where teachers noted, that the student mastered an IEP goal, so the IEP was revised to remove that goal or update that goal. Specially designed instruction may need to be updated, that's the accommodation section of the IEP. So that's really where teachers were able to reflect on, what do I need to do, if anything, with this child's IEP? So that's that piece. So moving forward, teachers did reflect on this, so we've had follow-up meetings with teachers. And I would say a majority of them share that this was a very good process to go through. It can be a little cumbersome, a little timely. So I'm looking at, and Christine and I are gonna work together for next school year, looking at how we can sort of abbreviate the process a little bit, so that they're really focusing on the really important pieces of looking at IEPs and, things that need to occur to make sure that students are, meeting their IEP goals and making educational benefit through the IEP process. So we'll have additional professional development, and I'm sure that we'll share more features as we go along.
And I just wanna say, I'm gonna commend Amy, because this was a task, and the question I often ask, and, and what is important for the board to hear is, how do we, build confidence of families whose children have an IEP in the district? And how are we, putting in sort of a self-checking mechanism? Because special education is one of the areas in public education that can sometimes be really volatile. And create a challenge, that fractured relationship between families and the district. And so, they're asking themselves, how do we coach up the teachers to do some of that work as they're doing the work? And so if it ever comes to pass where we have to inspect files, nobody wants us doing. They don't, that feels, so if we train you to look at it with that kind of eye.
So this goes to the teacher, the classroom teacher.
That's what, yeah,
Yeah, so
they were doing it. No, not classroom, special ed.
No, yeah, these were not
Oh,
distributed,
it's gonna-
this was just a special education professional development opportunity. Yeah, so they worked through the process, now, were they, or should have they sort of collaborated with their colleagues in the process? When questions, came up, absolutely, because it is a team, special ed teachers don't exist on an island, it's a group of people supporting a child. So yeah, it was a really profound experience for some teachers, because they had a lot of epiphanies, like, ooh, I never thought of this, or oh, I don't usually go back and look at certain things, and
Is this, did you
I
make
did
this
not
up?
develop this,
Like, okay.
so this is actually from the special education compliance model provided by the Bureau of Special Education.
Let's have them for.
So these are legit documents.
Or, as a school.
Right.
Well, and as a former special education teacher, I think had I known. In a hearing, what was going, like, how people were gonna be viewing the records that I was writing and the information I was sharing. I would have had a much more, granular eye. It's always good to know where first base is, and
Right.
so. I think that their efforts, Christine and Amy's efforts to really tackle this and coach up teachers and make sure.
And parents and
We're doing- Yeah,
Absolutely, and like I said, my request was, please select a child that there might be some complexities to. Not your, your child with one IEP goal who looks like they're gonna exit soon. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it was a great process to go through. It was a great opportunity to sit and collaborate with teachers. That's a really important part of our jobs as administrators. To provide that professional development, that support and things like that. And to go back to what Andrea just said about families and collaboration, I always have to go back to early intervention and how so important it is to make families feel comfortable and part of the team and part of the school district before their child even
Right
gets
off the
there.
bat, yeah, makes sense.
The additional professional development, is that gonna be something that you use the special education compliance monitoring, like, are you outsourcing or?
No, it'll be within, and we may adapt certain things, Christine and I will work together over the summer. to sort of take a look at things, and how we would like to move forward with this. Because there is a need for professional development in this area. And so it'll be with us through our monthly department meetings, you know, just impromptu meetings with teachers, scheduled meetings with teachers. And also, you know, putting ourselves out there for teachers to reach out to us. And that's really what, you know, happened through this process too. It was a lot of collaboration and great conversations.
I think it's important, like Andrea said, as you were giving this scenario where you're documenting things and then they're provided at hearing and you're like, well, oh, that's how that goes. I think not everyone understands that. I don't understand it firsthand, but I have a dear friend with a special needs son and like, she says, I go to these IEP meetings, I just come home and I cry. Because there's not good news, you know, and so, I don't know, just an understanding of how, here's what I have written down, and then think how you feel on the receiving. end.
Absolutely, and we do talk to our teachers about that, you know, we wanna identify strengths. You know, all of our students have a lot of strengths and everybody has something that they need to work on.
I need to go back to the 7 kinds of smart. My kids were little, they had that, and overall, it was the best thing ever.
This is good.
Good.
I will say, we have, based on some of the feedback they've gleaned already, you will see, the comprehensive plan had a very specific call out for the team to do an analysis of the program, both from feedback from things like the EDR, plus, you know, taking a very specific look at some of the challenges we've had in the past. You'll see some professional development already built in, it's in-house, but related to progress monitoring and rate of growth. So some of these questions are related to, if you're looking at goals, have you documented growth? Well, rate of growth based on the student's needs and IQ look different. And so I think even, you know, again, as a former special ed teacher, you have to be very clear about what are the expected rate of growth and document that. So that's work that we're definitely doing next year, in addition to continuing the process. So, good.
And we see our teachers, you know, as a group and individually at least once a month, if not more, like once a week or a couple of times a week. We definitely try to be out there in buildings, working with our teachers and supporting them.
Good. No, important.
Very
All right. So I guess the next meeting's in August of 2025 to be determined the actual day. Thank everyone for.
Are we just meeting for the whole month?
Sure, why not? That-
And as a reminder, we will bring back, that's the TSI update. Because
Yes.
we'll have all of the spring data in, that will be some more grading discussion. And we'll be working on the AI policy, more on the recommendation and guidance in the AR.
Okay.
So we are working with TLS over the summer as an administrative team to sort of get some of that, and so we have a team meeting over the summer for AI. It has opened a lot of questions, which is why we're really going slow.
Yeah.
August 21st is the projected.
Oh, that's right.
And we have projected dates for September, October as well.
And that's after.
Oh, yes, the
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Just to finish up the meeting, so I have a motion to.
Motion?
Oh, yeah, second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, and thank you everyone. Sarah, again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.